Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Coffee Lover's Dream. I suppose I should have been drinking coffee, but I'm drinking some peach tea today. It was that time of day. It was tea time. So if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, cobalt blue, fire red, deep yellow, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have two brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 3 round synthetic brush, and I'll refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. Let's see, if you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same type and size of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to paint our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are blue, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom color for the background. You could certainly use any color that you'd like. I'm going to be going for like a nice soft, neutral, like bluish, greenish, brownish kind of color. So I figured I'm doing a red-headed girl in my coffee cup, that red and this color would look good, so, or orangey kind of red hair. So this is what I'm going for. I've pre-mixed it. This is the color I'm headed for. How I got to that was about equal parts of brown, white, and blue. And then I just mixed them together. And whatever color it turns out, you can certainly tweak it and make it bluer or browner, or if you wanted to make it a little on the greener side, you could add more yellow to it because blue and yellow makes green. You could certainly just tweak this into whatever color you want, but that's about the shade I'm going for. And then once I've got it in the color that I want, I'm just going to paint the entire canvas with this color. So I may opt to do 2 coats to make sure that I have a nice solid color, but depending on the type of paint that you're using, you may be able to get away with just doing 1 coat and it'll be nice and flat and you won't have any kind of uneven spots. But I know for me, especially since I'm using this bristle brush, which tends to move my paint quite a lot and sometimes gives me these almost like thinner spots where I can see my brush marks, that may steer me to wanting to do a second coat. But again, if you've got thicker paint that may not show the brush marks as you go through this process, then you may only want to do or feel the need to do 1 coat, but I'm most likely going to do 2. I'll put this first coat on, I'll let it dry, and if I feel like I have any streakiness or if there's any brush strokes that are too evident for my liking, I will just put another coat on in the same manner. And I can also paint the edges or the sides of my canvas. So to make my project look nice and complete, if I want to, I can paint those edges of the canvas. So once I get it on here, what I do like to do is just kind of go back and forth to level out my paint, and this will help me make sure that I hit all of my spots. It'll give me a nice level thickness to the paint as well. And then we're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you get this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our mug. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that is comfortable to you, but I like to use a chalk so one, you guys can see, and two, if I make mistakes, I can easily correct them because chalk is easy to erase. So I do recommend that before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're going to connect those markers with some very basic shapes that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring in process of our mug. So I'm going to start with the top rim of the mug, which is going to be a large oval. I'm going to have mine sitting a little bit off to the left, not a lot, but it's not going to be dead center, it's going to be off to the left. But I'm going to start by giving you markers right up and down the center of the canvas. So if you find yourself the center of your canvas, top to bottom, left to right, so mine is about here. What I'm going to do from that is I'm going to go up about an inch, make myself a marker, and then I'm going to go up about 2.5 inches from there, make myself another marker somewhere in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of eyeball where the center of this is and then go out to the left and the right. So I'm going to do the left one first. So I'm going to find myself kind of split the difference between these two and come out to the left until I'm about 3.5 inches away from the edge of my canvas on the left hand side. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right, but I'm going to stop when I'm about 4.5 to 5 inches away from the right hand side of my canvas. So that way it's going to set this off to the left a little bit. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a huge oval. You just want to make sure that when you're doing this, you don't go straight and make yourself a diamond. So you want to make sure that you give these circular edges to it. So I'm going to start up in through here. I'm going to come around here, connect to here, hit my marker up in through here, and then come back and connect that. It doesn't have to be perfectly oval, but something like this will give you a good starting point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my liquid line where my coffee is going to be sitting, or cocoa, whatever you like your liquid to be. So I'm going to come down from this corner, maybe about 1/2 inch to an inch, make myself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to come down from this center, maybe almost about an inch, maybe 3/4 inch to an inch, and then over here on the same side. And again, I'm going to connect those 3 markers. So this should be a similar type of curve that you have up on the top. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just going to give you a starting point. And then what I'm going to do is I want to put the sides of my cup on, but I don't necessarily need it to be right in line with this being the center. So I'm going to kind of eyeball where the actual center is. So it would be just off to the left just a little bit. And then I'm going to come straight down from that. And I'm going to stop when I'm about 3.5 inches from the bottom of my canvas. And then what I'm going to do, that's going to give me kind of the height of it, and then I need to kind of tell myself what I want for the exterior. I'm going to have mine kind of tapering in a little bit. You might want yours if you have a favorite mug that you want to paint. Maybe you want straight sides, maybe you want kind of more decorative sides. I'm just going to go for like a little bit of a curve coming in. So I'm going to kind of come down from here to about here and then kick it in maybe about an inch, 1.5 inches. Do the same thing over here, kind of come down and kick it in maybe about an inch, 1.5 inches. And then I've got my markers to connect. I'm going to give this a little bit of a curve, so if these are not high enough, you can certainly start a little bit higher in order to give yourself just a little bit of a curve. Oops, I just went a little bit past that one. No big deal. So something like this will totally work out. And then I'm going to connect here to here, these two corners to these two corners. So I'm going to take this like this, and I'm going to give mine just a little bit of an arc. You don't have to if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. But I'm going to just kind of give mine a little bit of a shape, something like this. And this is the time if, you know, they weren't completely straight or symmetrical to one another, you can certainly adjust it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself on a handle. So I'm just going to go for a arcing type of a line here. I'm going to come up about a third of the way up my mug, and I'm going to drop this just maybe a little bit below the edge, and then I'm just going to connect these with a big old arcing type of a line, and then I'm going to do a similar one, maybe about a half of an inch to 3/4 of an inch on the inside of it, something like that. And then I'm going to put my saucer on underneath. So my saucer I'm going to have coming just a little bit below here, and then on the left hand side. The trick to here is you want it kind of about the same height on this left hand side so it looks even. I'm going to come down from here about an inch. I know that's about as far down as I want it. And then I'm going to travel over from the bottom of my cup to the left until I'm maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches away from the edge here. So it's a little bit farther out than that. And then on the right hand side, I can do the same. So something about here. So this is almost maybe as far as my handle is. And then I'm going to connect my dots. So I'm going to do a nice large oval like this, come and hit this marker in through here, and then bring it back up around this side and over in through here. And that is all I'm going to be doing for my outline. I'm going to be using my large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your chalk away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our coffee and our mug and the saucer. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using just black and brown for the color in my coffee. Of course, you know, maybe you want yours to be tea or something else. You can make yours whatever color that you like. And then the mug itself, I'm just going to be doing a light tan type of a color that will pre-mix when we get to it. So I'm going to start with my coffee. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and black on my brush at the same time. And then I'm just coloring it in. I don't need it to be a perfect coat because we're going to be creating all kinds of details and stuff on top of it. I'm just looking to give myself something that is representational to the color of whatever liquid I want in this tub of sorts. This morning bath, or maybe it's an evening bath. Maybe you make yours a cup of wine and you've got, you know, all kinds of different stuff, like a different kind of cup that you're using. But this is what I'm going to do for mine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush so I can create a custom color for the mug itself. And again, your mug can be any color that you want. I'm just going to go for a light tan color. So I have pre-mixed myself my tan. How I got to that was brown and white. And I didn't do anything fancy to this color. I'm just giving myself a tan that I'll be able to create some nice highlights and shadows on. So this is looking pretty good to me. I'm not going to do any fancy brush stroke on this. I'm just going to color it in. The only thing that I am going to concentrate on is when I have two sections that are next to each other that I want to kind of understand where they are and to not lose it, I will most likely leave a little bit of a visual gap between those two sections. So that way I don't forget that I want them to be different areas and represented as their own area. So I'm just going all the way down my chalk mark, and if you have chalk still visible after this step, it's okay, because like I said, we have lots of steps to go on these objects. So whatever you don't get done on this one or looks a little unfinished on this step, know that you will have future steps that will help to to finish it up. And again, I'm just kind of going down the edges. I'm looking for pretty clean edges on the outside of this mug. So I'm just kind of pushing my brush right into that edge. You could certainly have yours a little out of focus and not such clean edges, or when we again get to those future steps, if you need to clean them up, you know, with another layer, you can certainly do that. So that's looking pretty good. And again, I'm okay with the streakiness on it and the unfinished type of look. I'm going to go ahead and do my mug. I'll get back up to that in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and do my saucer. Again, I'm going to leave myself just a little visual gap between the two so I don't lose the idea of where I wanted those separating marks. And of course, you could certainly make your saucer a different color than the actual mug itself. So you can use your own creative thoughts and, you know, inspiration to get whatever colors that you want in play on these objects. This is, again, whenever you're creating a painting, obviously you're watching a tutorial, so you're looking to learn some stuff, but that doesn't mean that you can't make it your own. It doesn't mean that you can't change the colors or change the position. These are just, the information I'm giving you is just guidelines and kind of food for thought as you're going through your own creative process. And if you go outside your lines like I just did and kind of warped it a little bit, we did a nice flat color as our background, so you can always go back and correct those little edges if need be. A flat background is great for these paintings where you feel that you might have a lot of information around the focal point, so that way the flat background will not steal away from the show, and it's always easy to make corrections along those edges. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do my flat coat in here, and again, I'm just kind of slowing down around these edges so I can give myself kind of a clean exterior edge to the mug. And if you felt that you needed to use a smaller brush, you could certainly do that. And of course, like I was just saying down below, not only to make corrections, like if you go outside of your lines, but this flat background would be great to make an edge cleaner if you needed to. And I'm just going to bring this all the way over to here, leaving myself a little bit of a visual gap between those two, so again I don't get confused. Bringing it right to my liquid line in through here, and then when I got to do the handle part too, and this brush might be a little bit too big for me to do the handle, so I think actually now that I'm experiencing how it's going to go on this section, I'm going to switch to my small brush to do this little handle. So I just pulled out my small brush just so I can get the clean lines that I want to, and I can without struggle. And you can certainly do the same. Whatever you feel that you want, you know, you need a smaller section and you want to get those lines a little bit cleaner. Again, you don't have to struggle with a large brush. You can certainly just whip out a smaller brush and take care of that job. And then what we're going to do for the next step, we're going to be using our large brush as well. So once you've got this done, and again, don't worry about the little chalk marks. I'm actually leaving some of my chalk marks as I go through this handle because I'm finding that the chalk mark itself is maybe not the perfect way that I wanted it to be, so I'm using my own intuition to just kind of reshape this edge as I go through it, and then I can just come back and erase any of that chalk mark if I feel that it's unnecessary. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to put my small brush away, wash and dry my large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the highlights and shadows for our mug. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, tan, white, and maybe some of my background color because I'm going to do a shadow underneath my saucer as well. So when I'm doing this, one, I'm I'm looking to give my mug shape. So I want my mug to look rounded. So I'm going to be adding these highlights and shadows to give it a contour to show the form of that object. I'm going to do the same thing on my saucer, but I also want there to be some sort of light effects from a light source. So I'm going to be putting bright little highlights along the edges of my mugs. That's where the shadow underneath my mug is going to come from on the surface. That's going to be created from the light source. So these highlights and shadows serve multiple purposes. So I'm going to start with my shadow underneath my saucer. I'm using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using black and brown to scoot in a real dark shadow right underneath the saucer, and then I will rub it out to get it to dissipate onto that surface itself. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush, so little you can even wipe it off on your paper towel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up this curve just a little bit in through here, and then just kind of drag it across like this. And because I'm using that black and the brown, this is a pretty darn dark shadow underneath here. And then once I've got it all the way scooted over up this curve just a little bit, so it looks like it's like the object is going to be lifted off that surface a little bit. Now I can start kind of rubbing it out. So depending on how much paint you have on your brush, depending on how firm you're pushing, you may able to just rub this out and get it to dissipate without adding more paint onto your brush, or without adding any liquid medium or anything like that onto your brush. But if you're finding that you're not able to rub this out in a kind of a soft fashion, you could either add a little bit of liquid medium, or you could add some of your background color. There's several different methods that you could utilize to get this shadow to just become softer as it is going farther away from that darkest area in the middle. So I'm just using my scrubbing or rubbing type of technique right now, but if I felt that I was running into any kind of struggle where I felt it wasn't working out the way that I wanted to, like I feel this bottom edge is a little rough for me, so I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of my background color on my dirty brush so I can just kind of get these two areas to have a little bit more smoother of a transition. So that works out pretty well for me. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wash and dry my brush now. Maybe this needs to be pulled out just a little bit further. We're going to just rub this shadow out just a little bit further over here. So it looks like we've got a nice large footprint. So that's good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start with my saucer. So I'm going to start in a similar fashion, but I'm not going to have as much paint on my brush. I'm going to be doing just a tiny little dark shadow right underneath my mug, and then I will get it to blend out into the saucer and then put a little bit of a highlight on the edge. So I'm going to start with itty bitty bit of black and brown, just a teeny tiny bit on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of scoot this right in through here where I had that separating line. Is a great place to just kind of scoot this in, maybe a touch more black, just so we can make sure we've got a nice little dark shadow right underneath that mug. There we go. That works for me. And I don't want this shadow to really take over the color of the saucer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wash my brush because I feel like I have too much black on there. So I wash my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of my tan plus brown. So this is tan plus a little bit of brown. And this will help me to get that transition over into the saucer itself without it going too dark on me. So this was brown plus my tan, and I'm going to just bring this all the way to my edge, something like this. And as I come around this side, just going to get it to blend in with that little dark shadow underneath the mug itself. I don't need to do much to the saucer. I'm just kind of getting to be a little tiny bit darker where it's meeting the mug. So again, I just picked up a little bit of brown plus my tan in through here. And this will get it to look like it's dipping in just a little bit. So, and it's also giving me an opportunity to make sure that I have a nice full coverage on that saucer itself. Now I'm going to pick up my tan plus white to give myself a little light edge to my saucer. So this is tan plus white on my brush. And again, this is, I'm in essence kind of finishing my saucer with these highlights and shadows. And I'm going to do the same thing for my mug. So I'm bringing this along the edge like this. And I just take my brush and I'm just kind of turning it around the corner like this. And then I can just scoot it right across this front area. And I get it to blend in just a little bit in through here. So giving this inside edge a little soft blend like that. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing over on the other side. So white plus a tiny bit of tan on my brush. And I'm just going to kind of go right along this edge up in through here. And again, if you felt that you wanted to use a little smaller brush, you could feel free to do so. And again, I'm just kind of turning my brush as I go right around this corner, and I'll end up cleaning up this little edge with my background color as I after I'm done with this step. So just bringing this right along the edge, something like this, and then I wipe my brush off and just get this inside edge to be nice and soft like this. So then I'm going to repeat this step in a similar way on the actual mug itself. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to do my shadowy areas first, work my way towards the light. So my shadow is going to be on the right and a little bit on the bottom of the mug. I'm also going to have a little bit of a shadow in through here and then a little bit on my handles, and then the rest will transition into the light. So I'm not going to use black. I'm going to use brown as my shadow color up here, similar to how I did on the saucer. So I'm actually just starting with brown on my brush. I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to go on this right hand side with my brown, just making sure I get to the edge all the way over in through there. And then I'm going to bring it down this bottom a little bit in through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it in and get it to blend in with the main color in through here. So once I've got that brown on there, what I can do without washing my brush, I'm picking up my tan. And this will get these two colors to blend nicely with one another. And these bristle brushes are great because it allows you to continue to move that paint as it's drying. So I'm creating this on the fly nice blend in order to get them to look like they belong together, and it's going to give it a nice transition. I'm picking up more of my tan as I go over towards this left hand side of the mug and through here, just making sure that I've got everything blended as I'm going. And because I didn't wash my brush, I was able to just get these two sections to blend together because those colors were, I still had a little bit of the brown on my brush as I was working that blend. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit, before I get into my highlight, I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown to get a shadow in this interior of my mug. So I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up some brown, and I'm going to get a nice interior shadow going on in through here. I'm leaving a tiny bit of a edge at the top, like that's still being illuminated from whatever that light source is, and I'm just bringing this right into this little crevice in through there. And then this right hand side, I'm going to get it to get a little bit lighter over on the right hand side, as if maybe the light source is catching a little bit of the interior of that mug. So something like that. And I'm picking up my tan just to kind of finish out this interior part, and then I will go towards my highlight. Oh, actually, let me put my little shadow on these guys too. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of tan. I'm going to put a little shadow in through here. And again, on this handle part, if you felt you needed to switch to the smaller brush, feel free to do so. I'm going to put a little bit up in through here, and now I'm going to start working my way towards those highlights. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start picking up my tan color, make sure I've got that brown kind of worked its way off of my brush, and then as I go over towards this left hand side, I'm picking up tan plus white on my brush at the same time. So what this is going to do is it's going to give me this light area over on this left hand side, and it's also going to, as if it's being hit by the light, and it's also going to give me the contour of it. So I've got that in through there, and then I'm going to just start blending this. Oops, went into the inside of my mug. I'm going to start blending this out and making sure that I've got a nice light edge to the cup up at the top as well. And then this is where I just kind of sit here and work this blend. So another thing is, you know, try not to have too much paint on your brush. When doing a blend, we want to keep that paint moist so it moves around, but if you have too much paint in the equation, it begins to be very difficult and you may muddy up all of those colors. And then that's looking pretty good. I want to put a little highlight over here, so I just picked up a little bit of white on my brush to get the top edge over here, maybe a little bit of the white up at the tippy top in through here just to give myself a little kind of bright spot up there. And then I would just kind of blend this out, maybe a little edge of a light spot over in through here. So I'm just using a little bit of white on my brush to get the evidence of some real nice highlights on a couple of the areas, and now I'm just picking up some tan to make sure that it blends in. And again, you could certainly use your small brush to get these little nuances of the little bright highlights going. And then I'm thinking that that's pretty good, maybe a little bit more brightness. I just picked up a touch more white, get a little bit brighter up in through here. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So I might let this dry for a minute, come back if I feel I want to enhance any of my highlights or my shadows. I certainly will do so. And then I will put this large brush away, take out my small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our female and all the little objects. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, red, yellow, and white. I think that's it. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So I'm going to be making a couple of custom colors along the way, but we're going to be starting with our objects that we're going to paint with brown, which are going to be our ladder and our coffee beans. So I'm going to start there. I've got my small brush, brown paint on my brush. I'm going to have a ladder kind of coming from the top area over here and coming all the way down to the floor. So I'm just using brown paint as my base color. I'm going to give it a little bit of a hook up at the top as if they're, you know, like it's a ladder that you'd see maybe in a swimming pool or something. I suppose you could make yourself a couple of markers. So if that's where I'm going to start it, I'm going to end it down in through here. So that gives me a place to shoot for. And then I'm pushing my brush a little hard so I get a line that's maybe about 1/8 of an inch to a quarter of an inch wide. And of course, this is just a fun illustrated type of painting, so we don't need to labor over, you know, perfectly straight lines. But if you felt the need to make your lines perfectly straight, you could certainly draw them out and then just kind of go a little bit slower on them. I will also be doing some details on here as well, so even if they're not perfectly straight, know that we've got a little step that's going to help to hide any imperfections. So then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side, give myself that little bit of a marker up top, and then down at the bottom give myself another marker so I have somewhere to shoot for. And then I'm just going to kind of bring this all the way down, keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other marker. That's really where these dot to dots kind of were created, because I always like to have a place where I'm shooting for, because for some reason my brain doesn't always connect the way that it needs to. So having these markers to shoot for really helps me to make sure I stay on course. Then I'm just going to put some rungs on my ladder, so you can really put them, you know, in whatever distance away from each other that you want. I think I'm going to go maybe about an inch or so away from each other, and I guess they could be a little at an angle. I think that would make sense as they're coming down. I don't know, maybe it's at a little bit of an angle. You can determine what angle your runs on your ladder would be, but you just want to make sure she can actually reach it. So maybe put one close to the bottom and one close to the top, so it helps her achieve her goal of getting into this big cup of coffee. So now I'm going to go ahead and make some beans over in through here. So coffee beans to me are kind of like shaped like little kidney beans or just regular beans. So I'm going to put maybe one in front of another. So maybe this one sits behind that one. And then maybe I'll have one over in through here. I'm not doing too many, but maybe just like 3. You could certainly have them all around. You could put little flip-flops on this saucer, like, you know, she's got her morning, or slippers or something like that. You can put all kinds of fun objects around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a couple of custom colors. I'm going to have her towel and her mug are going to be pink, so I'm going to create a custom pink, which I've already done. So how I got to this was I just used red and white. So red and white is going to create this nice vibrant pink color. I'm going to show you all of my custom colors right now, so that way we only have one time to do mixing here. So that's going to be my custom pink for my blanket and my towel and my mug. This is going to be the custom color for her hair. How I got to this was I used red and yellow to make a nice orange color, and then I added a little bit of brown and a little bit of white into it to get kind of a more thick, kind of rich color to it, so it's not just orange. And that's what I'm going to be using as the base coat for her hair. She also has a little hand, and her shoulders are going to be visible in my painting, so I created a custom skin color. So how I got to this was about equal parts of red, yellow, brown, and white. And then I just mixed it together. That looks a little bit dark, so I'm going to add a little bit more white into it. And I like to, at times, use my own skin tone as kind of a barometer. So I can take this color, maybe a little bit more brown in this mixture. There we go. I can take this color on my brush and just hold it up to my own skin. It's a great test for me, just to get a believable skin tone. If I wanted to alter it and make it darker or lighter, I can certainly do that, but starting with my own is just a pretty easy place for me to start. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now that I've got all my custom colors, and I'm going to start with the towel and the mug. So I'm starting with my pink. I'm going to have my towel hanging over here. So I'm not more than halfway over the side of my mug, so that way it leaves me enough room to put her in there. I'm going to give myself a little bumpy edge that's above the rim of my mug, so that makes it look like it is kind of draping over it. And then I'm just going to kind of bring this down in a wavy type of line on the left and the right. And the waves don't even have to be the same. And then I'll give it the bottom edge. And then I'm just going to paint it in with my pink right now. If you don't get a perfect coverage to it, that's okay. Again, because we're going to be doing a lot of additional details with highlights and shadows in order to make it look like it's got a little bit of dimension and details to it. So no need to get it perfect just yet. I'm going to use this same color for her mug, so I'm going to just reload my brush with my pink. I'm going to have her mug in this area over and through here. So, oops, I got blue on my brush. Hold on, let me wash and dry my brush so I don't have blue on there, and just reload with my pink. I'm going to have it right about in through here. So really I'm just going to do a little bit of an oval for the top edge of it. and it magically has coffee in it because of the background. And then I'm just going to bring this down on the right hand side and the left hand side, color in this area and through here. And I'm just giving it a thin coat because I know I'm going to want it to dry pretty quickly, and I know that I'm also going to have some other details that I'll be putting on top of it in a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little handle in through here like that. So again, not terribly concerned about its perfect shape at this point. We can certainly modify it, but that's going to be my start. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put her head on. Well, maybe I'll put her shoulders. I'm going to put her head on first. So I've got my small brush. I washed and dried it. I'm going to pick up my custom hair color. I'm going to have her having her hair up in a ponytail. So I'm going to have it really long down into my mug into here, and then the top of it, it's going to be, the top of her head is going to be right about here, but she's got a ponytail kind of tied up, so I'm going to have that up there. So I'm going to start with an oval type of a shape for her head in through here, and her hair is, you know, messy and tousled around, and it's her morning hair, and I know that my morning hair certainly has a lot of character to it, so hers does too. Sometimes we paint the things that are very familiar to us, and messy morning hair is very familiar to me. So that's going to be the top of her head. I'm going to put a little bump at the tippy top where her ponytail is going to emerge from, and then I'm going to put some real long pieces kind of coming out in through here. And again, I'm going to be we're going to be doing the skin for her shoulders in a minute too, but I'm just giving this a base coat, so if I'm going to need to overlap in some areas, that'll be totally fine. And you can just give these little flicks out if you want it to look a little curly. Feel free to do that. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put my skin tone on my brush. So that's going to be that light peachy color that looks just like my skin, and I'm going to just put the illusion or the essence of a couple little shoulders in through here. So as you go through this process, if you put the skin tone on and you're like, well, that's not exactly as I had thought it would be, because it's going to change a little bit as it dries, it's going to look a little bit different on the whatever color it is here. So if you feel that you need to change it at all, feel free to do so. If you feel like you're going to see her neck a little bit, put a little neck in there. I'm going to bring this shoulder out to about halfway underneath that mug, somewhere in through here, to make sure that it looks like she's got a good distance for those shoulders. And again, we can modify any little edges of the mug that need to be modified if needed. And then I need a little hand. So I'm going to picture her hand to just kind of be her fingers through the handle, and we're just going to see her thumb and her little wrist. So I'm going to just put a little thumb kind of in through here, and then you're not really going to see much of it right now just because of the skin color is very similar to the mug color. And then I'm going to just kind of get this to drape over this corner of the mug in through here with her little thumb, and then she's going to have her wrist just kind of coming down and hiding, you know, in the mug itself. So something like this. And then of course you can modify that, but again, just the essence of a couple of fingers wrapped around will totally work. And then we're going to use this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our ladder and our beans. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are black, brown, and white. If I need to use any other colors, I will let you know. So what I'm going to be in essence doing is just adding some highlights and finishing the dimension on the actual ladder. I'll be adding some shadows underneath it and casted upon my mug, my saucer, and my surface. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my beans. I'm going to add some little details with highlights and shadows on the beans, and then I will add a little bit of shadow underneath them. I'm probably also going to do a little shadow of this handle on the surface of that mug saucer as well. So I'm going to start with my ladder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my shadow underneath it first. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black paint on my small brush, and I also have a little bit of water on my brush as well. So this shadow here is going to be on the surface of the that the mug is sitting on. So I'm going to do it in a diagonal way from the foot of the ladder and just bring it back only as far as the saucer. So this is going to go in through here and then just hop over the other one and give it this little spot over in through there. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a shadow of this on here. I'm going to use brown and black with a little bit of water on my brush, so it is a little bit lighter of a shadow. This shadow is going to take on the contour of the saucer. So my saucer kind of dips in and it kind of bumps up in through here. So I'm going to start right about in through here, and I need this to end up at the edge of my ladder in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to dip it down just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it back up, and it's going to come over the edge of my saucer in like this, and then meet that that part of the ladder. So something like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and it's going to get skewed because it's going down the saucer. So I'm going to take it from here, kind of give it this little contour curve, and then just bring it back down in through here. And I'm going right over my ladder rungs right now because I know that I can. I know that I'm going to be doing details on those in a minute, so whatever I've overlapped in through here, I'm not concerned about. And then I'm going to give it a couple of rungs, so maybe to represent this one and this one in through here. So again, just my brown and whatever remnants of the black were on my brush, just giving these in through here and maybe one in through here. And then I'm going to do the same thing up at the top. So again, I'm using watered down brown, black, and water. So watered down brown and black. And I've got to make this one meet this one in through here using a big curve to represent the shape of the mug. So something like this. I'll start here. I'm going to bring this over in through this direction and then just bring this down in my curve. Just kind of taking my time, and I can always add more paint if I need to, but this is looking pretty good. Just allowing myself to put it on in a believable way because I'm using the water on my brush. It's giving me a nice transparent look to my shadow, and then I'm just reloading my brush, making sure that I've got the combination that I want, and then starting from this one over on this side. And again, I need it to come to right in through here, so I'm just going to bring this down in this direction. And of course I can go a little bit darker if I feel that that's too light. That was a little bit too light, so I just added a bit more paint to the equation, and then just a couple of rungs going up it. So again, just taking on the contour of the mug as best as I can. And of course these don't have to be perfectly lined up, but something believable will make sense. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight on here. So I'm going to put brown and white on my brush, and I'm going to just kind of go down the edge with brown and white, something like this. And if I needed to put another layer of brown on, I certainly could, but I'm thinking that just the brown and the white is going to work out for me right now. So, but if while you're doing yours, if you're saying, I just have some areas that just look unfinished, just pick up more brown, you know, and just do a second layer of that brown, and that will work out. And then I'm just going to kind of pop on a couple of little highlights in through here. So again, just brown and white is going to create those. And then I'm going to move on to my beans. So my beans, I'm going to do a similar thing, but I'm going to start with black paint. I'm going to give myself a little indent in the center of my beans, because when I look at coffee beans, they have a little depression in the center of them. So that's how I'm going to emulate these. While I have that dark color on my brush, I just added a touch of water, and I'm going to give myself a little shadow underneath the bean of the bean. So something like this will help me to achieve that. And again, if you want your shadows to really speak to the intensity of the light, you can make them really dark. If you want them to just be subtle, make them subtle. It's, you know, shadows are, you know, they do take on the rules of the light source, but you get to create what that light source is. So if you want it super bright, then you make your shadow really on the darker side. So that's good for my shadow. I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight with brown and white. I'm going to give a little bit of a highlight in through here just to give myself the edges of those beans. And of course you could make yours, you know, maybe you want yours to be, I don't know, a different kind of bean. Maybe you want yours to be little pieces of chocolate down here or something. So you could certainly have fun with that. I'm going to put a little shadow on the mug of the handle. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm going in for that watered down brown and black mixture. I'm going to start right in through here, and I'm going to get this shadow to curve up the saucer itself, and maybe get a little bit wider in through here. And again, I'm just giving myself a shadow of the handle on the saucer. So I'm giving it that curve to speak to the contour of the mug itself, or of the saucer. I think that's it. As I'm looking around, I'm like, do I need to do anything else? I don't think so. I think that does it for that step. So we're going to be using this same small brush for the next step, so you can make any little fiddling, adjusting that you would like, and then you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the coffee. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are, I'm going to use some of her hair color, yellow, white, and brown. And if I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So really what I'm looking to do is give myself maybe some little bubbles, I guess, of sorts along the edges, or some, maybe not necessarily foam, but some kind of texture of that liquid along the edges. I'm looking to put some steam coming out the center of it, maybe some steam coming out over here, and then just finishing it so it looks complete. Because right now I can see a little bit of my blue coming through from the background, so I want to make sure that I have finished all of that area. So I'm going to start with a little bit of brown paint on my brush, just to kind of clean up any edges where I feel are not fully painted. As I go through this process, I am not terribly concerned if I bump into other objects. I am more concerned about finishing my coffee and making sure those details are the way that I want. And then if there are any areas that I bump into that I feel need additional manipulating after I'm done this step, then I'll do that. But I'd rather make this coffee look more believable than to be concerned about, ooh, I bumped into that mug. You know, I can certainly correct that as I go through that process. So I'm just using brown right now to get myself this complete coverage in through here. Along my edges, I'm going to be putting those fine details of the texture. Maybe there's you know, some cream or something along the edges that has gotten a little foamy and is giving it some extra special look to it. So this is just my brown right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in a second here, once I make sure I've got a good coverage here, I make sure I got a little coverage in there too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a touch of my hair color on my brush. So that's that custom kind of orangey, rusty color that we created. And I'm just gonna give these little kind of bubbly type of marks, just almost swirling my brush around to give myself the illusion of this, you know, additional texture over on the edges of the coffee. So something like that. Now I'm going to pick up maybe a touch of yellow, incorporate a little bit of yellow hues in through there, maybe a couple over in through here. I'm not doing much, just kind of adding some little effervescent kind of notes throughout here. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white on my dirty brush to give myself a little bit of 3D type of effect, just kind of tapping in a couple of little lighter marks in that area. So now that I've got that in there, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint and just make sure oops, there's another color on there. Let's pick up just black this time. I'm going to give myself a nice crisp edge right along where the coffee meets the mug in through here. So just a little bit of black is going to do that, and maybe a little bit of shadow underneath some of these effervescent notes in through here. Make sure that I've got a nice crisp edge over in through here, and I don't need it, you know, to be fine-tuned detail. This is just giving me the illusion of that coffee just, you know, having its blackest of blacks where I want it to, and then the other, you know, detailed information elsewhere. So that's looking pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some information in the middle. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and white, and a very little bit of each. And then I'm going to just kind of start swirling it around in this middle area, creating like a misty type of a look to it. I don't need it to be really bold. I just want it to have like a steam type of look to it. So that's why I'm starting with brown and white. And in a second, I will just use white, but I'm starting with the brown and the white so I can have it look more steamy as opposed to just using white to start this process. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the brown and the white with water on my brush, and I'm going to start the steam process going up into the air. So I've got brown and white. Just give a little bit more information in through here, and I have a little bit of water on my brush as well. And again, you want to make sure that you go behind or right up to that mug so it doesn't look like we're painting around it. And then once I've got that, again, just with that little bit of water on my brush, this is where I'm going to start to pull up some steam up into the air in through here. And again, it doesn't have, you can have some coming out of here as well. It doesn't have to be super white. I like to just kind of progressively use these transparent type of effects, so that way it makes it look more believable as opposed to just going full on white, using the essence of the maybe brown and white to give you a little bit more steamy look to it as opposed to just white streaks. I think that's where it's going to look the most believable and realistic, even though we're creating a painting with somebody swimming in coffee, which is not necessarily the most realistic thing. But now I'm just picking up a little bit of white on my dirty brush to give me a couple of brighter little notes of the steam coming up, and maybe, you know, and you can do as much as you want. You know, I think I want this one to kind of come up all the way, maybe a little bit more in through here. So once you've got it on there, then you can kind of say, oh, I think I want a little bit more here or a little bit more there. Like I definitely want some on this right hand side, and you can just kind of have fun with it and make it as, you know, steamy as you want. Maybe yours come up in little swirls, or maybe, you know, you've got, you know, something else happening to it. That's totally up to you. And the more foggy, I just kind of made it a little bit more foggy in through here. That's going to make it look even even, hotter, I guess is the right word for it. And then once you've got this done, you can fiddle with it all you want. I think maybe I want a little bit more black in here, so I just picked up a little bit more black so I can get just a little bit more dimension in through here. So if you flattened it out too much and you're not feeling the dimension in it, you can bring back some of these darker colors. Like I just brought back a little bit of black in order to accomplish that. And then I'm going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your coffee done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the towel, the mug, and her skin. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are pink, brown, white, and my skin color. And if there's any other color, oh, maybe a little black too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little shadow underneath my towel. Then I'll give my towel a little bit of dimension with some highlights and shadows. I'll do the same thing with my mug, finish off my mug with a little bit of shadow and a little bit of highlight, and then we'll do the same thing for the skin, and then they'll just be done. So I'm going to first start with my shadow underneath my towel. So I'm going to start with black, brown, and a little bit of water on my brush. I'm going to give myself a real kind of deep shadow right up in through, need a little bit more black on my brush, little shadow right up in through here so it looks like that towel is just draped right over the edge of the mug, something like this. And then I just keep putting a little bit of water on my brush in order to give myself the soft edge that I might want on it. So something like that. I'm going to skip this little part. I'm going to put another little shadow right underneath here. This is going to make it look like, this is laying down closer to the mug, and then this part might be lifted off of the mug a little bit. So those little nuances will help to make it, again, look a little bit more realistic. And then if I want this edge to flip out a little bit, I can put my shadow underneath here, and then maybe this little edge is disconnected from the maybe this kind of flips up like that. So you can play with these shadows in order to tell the viewer what's happening. If it's laying really close, you might not see that shadow. If it's kind of flipped up a little bit, maybe you'll see it a little bit more. I think I want this a little bit further down, which will indicate that it's kind of lifted up just a little bit more. I'm going to put just a little bit more water on my brush to just thin this out just a little bit in through here. And that's another thing with acrylic paint. If it's kind of hasn't cured all the way, you can reopen it or re-moisten it with a little bit of water. So if you do something you're like, well, that was a little bit too much, you can just use a little bit of water to open it back up, or you can pick up some of your tan color. Like I don't like this line in through here, so I picked up some of my mug color and I just kind of am correcting that on the fly. And then I'm going to utilize, I'm going to go right up into my towel. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up a touch of brown, and I'm going to give myself a couple of creases coming down my my towel. So wherever I have little bumps up like this, that to me would be bumped out. So I'm going to put a crease in between those. So something like that. And then I'm just going to arbitrarily kind of put some creases in the rest of it, something like that. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off and pick up some pink and get those dark areas to kind of blend into that fabric. So something like this. And again, I'm just really having fun with this. You don't have to even put creases in your towel. I'm just giving mine a little bit of body and a little bit more substance, so it's not so flat against the mug. So this is just the approach that I like to take, or that I felt I wanted to take, because it just gave it a little bit more substance. And then I'm going to put pink and white on my brush to give myself a little highlight up at the top. So I have pink and white, and I feel that this top part would be illuminated the most due to its proximity to the top of my canvas because I feel that that is where my light source would be. So this is just pink and white. And then I'll just kind of get it to blend down into the darker region of the towel. And in a second, I'm going to pick up a little bit more pink. So now I'm just transitioning with a little bit more pink on my brush, and that's going to get it to go a little bit darker as it goes down that towel. And even these areas where I put the wrinkles per se, they too, I'm just kind of painting over them, and they're still evident, so that allows that to happen. Maybe a little bit more brightness on this little tip in through here. So that was pink and white that I just created these little cute tips in through there. So there we go. Now I'm going to move to my mug. I'm going to put a little bit of brown paint on my brush just to give myself a little bit of a shadow over here on the right hand side. I don't need to do much at all, just a little bit in through there. I'm going to pick up some pink. I just wiped my brush off. I'm picking up some pink paint to get that shadow to blend in. So just I started with brown, now I'm on to my pink. I'm working myself around my little thumb at this point, and again my thumb is so close in color to my mug, you might not even see a lot of it, but when I do my skin, I will get that thumb to pop out just a little bit more with the evidence of a shadow. I'm going to just bring this up towards the top and clean up my handle. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint to give myself a little highlighted edge to my mug in through here. So this is white on my brush, and again I'm just kind of popping in very subtle little highlights in through here, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my skin. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up my skin tone, and I'm going to make sure I have a second layer on her shoulders in through here. I think I'm going to have to put a little highlight on my mug too, just along this edge, so these two don't compete with one another. So I'm going to just do my skin first, and then I will go ahead and make sure that I've got the edge of the mug not competing with my skin. So, and then I'm just doing my second layer on my arm and my hand. Again, I just have my skin tone on right now. I'm not going to do any details on her thumb. You could certainly put a little nail polish on her thumb or something like that. I'm really just going for the illusion of a hand here. I don't need or desire any more detail than that. So once I've got that, I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up some brown paint, and I'm going to do just a little shadow on this right hand side of her thumb, just so it separates away from the mug, maybe a little bit in the crook of her hand in through here. Again, I'm hardly doing anything, maybe a touch for like the illusion of some fingers in through here, but not much at all. Maybe even a little bit down on her back in through here, something like that. Now I'm going to pick up my skin tone plus white to give myself a little highlight. So I did my shadow, now I'm going to do my highlight, and again, nothing other than to say this is a finger. If you wanted a little and a hand, if you wanted more detail than I'm doing, you could certainly do that. Maybe a little bit on her shoulder in through here to get that to look like there's a little bit of a highlight on it. And you could, I suppose, do it here too. I'm going to pick up white plus my tan now so I can get this edge of my mug to separate from the skin. So again, that was just something I needed to do on the fly so we could see the difference between those two, and maybe just make sure the edge of my mug was cleaned up enough. So that's looking pretty good. And then you can do any little adjustments that you want. We're going to use this same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish her hair. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my custom hair color, black, brown, and white. And if there's any other colors I use, I'll let you know. So again, I'm going to be putting a little bit of a shadow on the mug of her hair, and then I'm going to be creating dimension in her hair with highlights and shadows. So I'll be putting some shadows on the sides of her hair that are being pulled up into the ponytail, and then I'm going to be creating just some movement in that ponytail to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to start with my shadow along the edge of the mug. So again, this is going to be black, brown, and a little bit of water on my brush. And I, again, don't need to do much, just kind of giving the illusion of the, wherever that light source is, maybe it's casting a shadow of some of her little pieces of hair coming over on the side. And again, these are just those little tiny details that if you can incorporate them in the painting, even in a fun, whimsical painting like this, it's going to give that sense of realism and that, that extra bit of design element that'll make it, have a larger story to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint so I can kind of outline or delineate the ponytail from the side of the head. So I've got my hair is going to be kind of pulled up in this direction, like up towards the ponytail or in that general vicinity. So I'm just, and this is going to be the shadowed side of the head. So I'm using quite a bit of black in through here. Now I'm going to pick up, I didn't wash my brush, so I have black plus my hair color on, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side, but because I have the hair color on my brush, it might not be as dark as it was on the right hand side. And so that's going to immediately separate that ponytail from the sides of the head. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my hair color to finish out these on my dirty brush. So there's evidence of the black there too, to finish out the exterior edges of the head and to give it a nice finished look over on these sides before I start building that ponytail. And I'm going to pick up my hair color plus a little bit of white paint on my dirty brush to give myself a couple little highlights over here on the left hand side. And again, I'm kind of just pulling it in these curved lines in the general direction of how I feel it would be pulled up into the ponytail. But this ponytail is super high and, maybe it's, bunched up in a different way. You can, again, use your imagination on stuff like that. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown for this right hand side, again, on my dirty brush, just to make sure that I've got some highlights, but they're maybe a little bit darker than they are on the left hand side. Now I'm going to just start building my ponytail. So I want there to be a little bit of darkness in it so I can build to the light. So I wipe my brush off. I'm picking up some brown paint to give myself a couple of darker little streaks throughout the ponytail. So this is going to help me build some good dimension throughout the ponytail. And I'm not doing much. I'm really just kind of adding a couple of dark streaks in there. Now I'm going to pick up my hair color to just kind of, in essence, wet the surface. So it'll help me build my highlights in a nice, easy way. And again, I'm just kind of going for a long, kind of slender type of a ponytail, but you could really morph this into whatever you want. Maybe you want yours to look like a bun on the top of the head. Maybe, feel free to explore. I'm going to have it kind of spilling out and billowing out from this little top part. So I'm going to start to put a couple of little wild, carefree pieces of hair coming out that top. And now I'm going to start picking up my hair color plus white on my brush to give me my highlighted pieces. So I'm not going for just white, which is why I'm using it with my hair color as well. So this is going to allow me to get these nice kind of highlighted streaks within the hair without going all the way white, and allowing me to build these different tones of the hair. I feel like, she's got maybe some layers in her hair, so that's where I'm able to just kind of make almost shorter marks, or if you want it to be super long, just pull them in a long brush stroke. I'm clearly using some wavy hair techniques in through here, so that's where I'm just kind of allowing it to have some movement to it, keeping some of those dark areas showing. And again, you can make it as, you know, full as you want or as straight as you want. I'm just going to put a little bit more in through here so it looks like it's maybe catching some of that light, and you can, you know, just keep playing with it. If it all turns one color, just wait for it to dry and you can come back and put little layers on top of it. And then just fiddle as much as you want. I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step so you can wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going to go bottom left, and I'm going to use black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It's totally fine because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a fun, whimsical image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.